Part 44. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 431. Where will the collection be? Nolan walked forward with difficulty against the flow of people. This is a 5-story yacht. The bottom floor is the staff area, activity area, and instrument hall. The second floor is the third-class guest room and lounge, the third floor is the second-class guest room and lounge, the fourth floor is the first-class guest room and lounge. What about the fifth floor? As they talked, the two came to the fifth floor. Standing at the corner of the stairs, carefully hiding their bodies, the two looked at the corridor. There are not many rooms on this floor. One of them is particularly large, occupying about half of the area. At the door of the room, two people stood on the left and right with guns. There are two people walking back and forth in the corridor, with vigilant eyes and patrolling seriously. It seems that this is the room. No matter what happened downstairs, these four people were unmoved, did not whisper to each other, and did not even make eye contact. John Killen subconsciously touched his backpack, and touched it, but it was empty. But the bag was left in their room. He originally wanted to use the tear gas in the bag. What to do? John Killen frowned. He wanted to see what the auction would sell. It was so grand. Were they really unique pieces, or were there some unimaginable weapons of mass destruction, or was it just a trick? Just as he was thinking, Nolan patted John Killen on the shoulder. John Killen looked at him. He blinked at John Killen and mouthed, "Look at me." Nolan had a mask in his hand. It might have been taken off someone's face when the crowd was crowded just now. He took off the mask on his face, put it in his chest, and then put this mask on his face. After putting on the mask, Nolan reached out from his trouser pocket and took out a golden object. It was the fatal Masonic badge. He pinned the badge on his chest. John Killen realized what he had done. However, he didn't have time to stop him. Nolan had already walked out of the corner. He walked towards the collection room with a swagger. Nolan felt like he was like the first time he became a member of the H-Rangers and received his first mission, excited, nervous. That's right. The H-Rangers is to complete tasks that others think are impossible to complete and to take paths that others dare not take. He had a guess about the power behind this badge. The useless yellow-haired man said to the Japanese woman, "He wants to execute her." But the Japanese woman said, "You have lost the power to execute." The Japanese woman is not an ordinary person. It's not that you can kill or execute anyone you want. But neither of them thought there was anything special about this matter. He wore the badge just to try and see if this badge would play the role he imagined. The four people guarding the collection room looked at Nolan with vigilance. Nolan walked in the standard square steps of a big boss, neither fast nor slow. The four guards saw the badge on his chest. They showed surprised expressions. Only guests are eligible to wear masks. "You four, stand facing the wall," Nolan said. John Killen had already pulled out his gun, and quietly opened the safety bolt with his palm on the gun body, aiming at the caretakers. As long as the situation is not right, he will shoot. But the four caretakers, without a word of nonsense, turned around neatly, faced the wall with a plop, and knelt down with their backs to the door of the collection. "So obedient," Nolan said. The two caretakers immediately took off a large bronze key from their belts, raised the key above their heads without looking back. Nolan took the key, and finally took out the gun from his pocket and pointed it at the back of one of them. He hesitated for a long time. He finally failed to press the trigger. Nolan has killed many people in his life. Everyone is a vicious bastard. But facing these unarmed and defenseless people, he really couldn't do it. So, he pointed the butt of his gun directly at the back of a man's neck and hit him hard. The man fell limply. The other three people did not react at all. They were not afraid. Nolan knocked down the other three one by one. "Quick," Nolan shouted to the corner. John Killen came out, glanced at the four collapsed people on the ground, and then looked at the badge on Nolan's chest. Nolan handed John Killen a key. The door had two locks, one on the top and one on the bottom. "We each have one and turn it at the same time," Nolan said. The two of them hurried and stopped talking nonsense. Someone might come at any time. The two turned the keyhole and opened the door of the collection room. The room was very clean, even with the cleanliness and rules of a scientific laboratory. There were rows of multi-compartment cabinets with glass dust covers, some large and some small. Some large auction items were placed in floor-to-ceiling display cabinets. At a glance, you can see that the collections in the room are divided by type. Paintings and calligraphy, jewelry and treasures, video equipment, wait, video equipment. The videotape he was looking for was in the video equipment. Nolan went straight to his goal. John Killen took a rough look at the rows in order. Nolan quickly found his goal. He put on gloves, took out the videotape, and put it in the plastic bag he carried with him. "Mr. L, we should go." Nolan packed his things and turned back to call John Killen. The noise outside was much quieter, and the riot was probably about to subside. They had to leave now. John Killen did not respond. Nolan was a little curious, and walked quickly past the shelves. In front of a row of shelves, he saw John Killen. "What's wrong?" Nolan approached. John Killen had a fierce expression, staring at a pile of documents. Nolan leaned over to read the exhibition explanation. He struggled to recognize the Japanese characters on the explanation. X-31 troops, live dissection, germ experiment, precious experimental data, partial, missing. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 432. Nolan recalled. He said, "Isn't the X-31 unit an institution that studies disease prevention and drinking water purification? I remember that many researchers, professors, and medical scholars in Neon Country retired from this unit." John Killen's face flashed with an unspeakable pain. Nolan keenly noticed that his mood was wrong. "What's wrong? What did I say wrong?" "No, you are right. Only people of their own nation know the scars of their own nation. The wicked hurt others, got the advantage, and tried their best to publicize that they are innocent. If you fall behind, you will be beaten. Only fists are the hard truth. Never expect other countries and nations to uphold justice for your own country and nation. Moreover, although people sympathize with the weak, they admire the strong more and try their best to seek benefits." John Killen took out a tissue, put it on the glass cover, opened the glass cover, and took out the document. This document, because it is too old, has a faint yellow color and the edges of the paper are quite damaged. Nolan saw his serious look and had a guess. Could it be that, the experiments such as vivisection in these documents are crimes committed by the X-31 unit? The targets are Chinese. John Killen took off his black waterproof jacket, spread it on the ground, placed the documents solemnly in the middle, and carefully wrapped the documents with his clothes. As he wrapped the bags, he said, "Not only Chinese, but also Koreans, Soviets, and Mongolians. They are called Malyuta by the Japanese, which translates to round logs. The X-31 troops captured no less than 10,000 people and conducted devilish experiments. At that time, they invaded China and set up a laboratory in the northern part of China. That place was extremely cold, and many Japanese soldiers were frostbitten. In order to avoid and treat frostbite of soldiers fighting in the cold winter, X-31 medical scientists conducted cruel frostbite experiments on the prisoners. In the coldest season of the year, they drove Malyuta outdoors at minus dozens of degrees, forced them to soak their bare arms in ice water buckets, and used electric fans to blow cold air to accelerate freezing. Nolan's face flashed with pity. How to tell if the arm is completely frozen. Knock their arms with a wooden stick. The sound is muffled, not completely frozen. The sound is crisp, completely frozen. Then, they used various methods to thaw the arm, looking for the best thawing method. Finally, they found a way, using a temperature below 45 degrees to thaw, the effect is best. When the temperature exceeds 50 degrees, the skin and muscles on the frozen arm will fall off like paper scraps and cotton wool. The temperature is too low, the thawing speed is too slow, and finally the whole arm will be necrotic. At this time, John Killen has packed the documents. He stood up, holding a simple bundle made of clothes. Let's go. Nolan caught up and asked, are there any other experiments? Yes, a lot, John Killen said in a suppressed tone. Do you know how much water the human body contains? Nolan nodded, about 78%. Then do you know how this conclusion was reached? John Killen asked. Nolan's stomach shrank together. He had a terrible guess. It's the data obtained by the X-31 unit from the experiment of drying living people. This experiment was recorded in Makoto Morimura's Devil's Feast. They tied up living people and put them in a high-temperature drying room, drying them for 15 hours continuously, just like cookies in the oven, drying all the moisture in them. By repeatedly experimenting on different living people, you can get more accurate data. There are also atmospheric pressure experiments. The Japanese locked living people in a sealed laboratory, and then used special straws to slowly and continuously extract the air from them. They observed and recorded the reactions of living people when the air pressure dropped. As the air pressure dropped, those poor living people had severe headaches, bulging eyes, and shortness of breath. It was so painful that they could only scratch their necks with their fingers until they broke, and even ruptured their blood vessels and trachea. When the air pressure dropped to a certain level, these people's eyeballs burst, their internal organs exploded, and some organs burst out of their anus. Nolan felt a little nauseous. He pursed his lips, wanting John Killen to stop talking, but he couldn't. Neon's surgical medicine is internationally renowned. John Killen said coldly, that is the dirty honor they earned by performing vivisections on countless innocent people. Neon began to perform live dissections in order to train more outstanding doctors and let doctors have a better understanding of the human body. In order to simulate the pain on the battlefield, they would not inject anesthesia into the experimental subjects, but directly tied the living people to the operating table, smashed the bones, and cut the skin, muscles, chest, and abdominal cavities with knives, so that they could better observe the painful reactions of the injured. These living people, who were mentally clear, watched their bodies being subjected to various experiments, cutting muscles, smashing knees, joints, bones, taking out organs, or cutting or squeezing or pouring hot water, and observing their reactions. Many doctors finished dozens of hours of dissection experiments, and the experimental subjects were still alive, living in pain. In addition, there are starvation experiments, plague experiments, venereal disease experiments, terrifying female body experiments, maternal love experiments, thirst experiments. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 433. Every time John Killen said the name of an experiment, Nolan felt his heart become heavier. Just by listening to the name, one can guess how terrible these experiments are. At that time, the leader of the X-31 unit, Ishii Koshiro, said, using living people to conduct experiments is a shortcut. Moreover, logs are everywhere and are inexhaustible. Later, the X-31 unit used living people to conduct bacterial experiments. This is the prototype of the initial bacterial weapons. Koshiro conducted human experiments in order to study more effective and faster ways to use bacteria and viruses with very strong lethality to kill all enemies at the lowest cost. At the same time, they also had to vaccinate their soldiers in advance, which could effectively protect themselves. Soldiers are not harmed by bacteria and viruses. Xiao Shilang said that if one day, a virus-bacteria transmitted disease broke out in the world, no one would know that this was not an ordinary outbreak of infectious diseases. It was a deliberate and directional poisoning of humans. Which country first broke out the disease, that country has original sin. No one would doubt that there is actually a pair of hands behind it, pushing all this. It lurks in the shadows, waiting to harvest the fruits. Pushing the door open, they found that the 4 bodyguards who were guarding the auction items were slumped at the door of the collection room, still in their previous posture, motionless. The deck of the luxury yacht was still in chaos. From time to time, the sound of sniper rifles sounded, and every gunshot would cause a scream. Someone was using a sniper rifle in the room, killing people for fun? There were not many people in the staircase corridor. There were guests in groups of 3 or 2, wearing masks, with no expression, and walking quickly with their heads down. John Killen and Nolan strode back to their room. Nolan immediately walked to the window and looked out against the glass. There were many people standing on the deck, all yelling. Some hid under the table, some ran meaninglessly, and some pulled the crew members to question something. There were several bodies floating near the sea. Their heads were blasted into a mess by sniper rifles, and the seawater around their heads was a pool of bright red. Bang! Another gunshot. No one fell on the deck. It was probably someone in the sea who was shot in the head. This person's shooting was very accurate. From this angle, Nolan couldn't see the person who was just shot in the head, and was just blocked by the pillar. In other words, the sniper hiding in a room specifically shot people who jumped into the sea and tried to escape. Someone didn't want them to escape control. Nolan guessed. He turned around and wanted to discuss his idea with John Killen. But he found that John Killen was packing the document. Layer by layer, carefully wrapped the document with plastic bags. Finally, put the document in the backpack. A meteor-like idea flashed through Nolan's mind. I remember. Nolan said, after Japan was defeated and surrendered, the United States once conducted an in-depth investigation of Japan's atrocities in China. If this X-31 unit really did so many cruel experiments, America couldn't have been unaware of it, right? At least he wouldn't be completely ignorant. Just like most people in this world are ignorant. John Killen glanced at Nolan lightly, picked up the coat that he had just used to wrap the documents on the ground, and put it on. While putting it on, he said, "How could America not know?" Of course America knew. Moreover, the final results of the X-31 unit fell into the pocket of the American government, in exchange for the acquittal of all members of the X-31 unit. Of course, Japan did not hand over all the experimental data. They cunningly kept a part of it. If what he held in his hand was genuine, it would be part of the experimental results that were not handed over to the United States at that time. After the trial, the officers and doctors of the X-31 unit who were acquitted returned to their own country. With the results of human experiments, they became internationally renowned experts, scholars, and medical researchers. Nolan looked skeptical. Is it true? WX95147, John Killen spoke clearly, spitting out a string of letters and numbers. Remember it. Nolan recited it silently and remembered it, then asked, what is it? You can go back and check it. This is a secret order issued by the US Department of Defense in 1947. The United States believes that the experimental results of the X-31 unit are very valuable and worthy of learning, reference, and use by the United States. If it is used well, it can consolidate the military strength of the United States. The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 434. The five-star general at the time, MacArthur, based on the secret order WX95147, allowed all members of the X-31 unit to safely come down from the military court and return to their hometown with honor. In the archives of the Science and Technology Department of the Library of Congress of the United States, many experimental report materials of X-31 are secretly preserved. After the United States took over the experimental results of the X-31 unit, it immediately continued the X-31 experiment without any hesitation. They moved to a more secret and strict laboratory. It's just that they moved to a more secretive, more strictly managed laboratory that will not be known by outsiders. Fort Detrick Laboratory. Nolan's expression became serious. Are you talking about the Biological Warfare Laboratory at the Fort Detrick base in Maryland? I'm not doubting you, but I still want to ask, is everything you said true? John Killen looked straight at him. Black eyes, facing blue eyes. Is this an honorable thing? Does it mean anything to me to tell you something unfounded? This is the shame of the Chinese nation. Nolan opened his mouth. John Killen lowered his thick black eyelashes and looked at the ground. In our country, there is an X-31 unit crime evidence exhibition hall. There is an anthrax experiment report in it, and there is an official seal of the United States on the cover, Chemical Force Research and Development Department of the Biological Warfare Laboratory at Fort Detrick Base in Maryland. Note, this report will be sent to headquarters. Having gotten what it wanted, the United States also gave back to Japan. In the international court, the United States promises not to disclose, not to know, not to question, and not to sanction all anti-human experiments of Japan's X-31 unit. These X-31 unit war criminals, relying on the experimental results of live experiments, have gained absolute respect in Japan. Subsequently, many war criminals were rewarded and successfully joined the upper middle class, and enjoyed a high reputation at home and abroad, and were respected and loved by people. Nolan felt like his chest was filled with cement blocks. It was bumpy, heavy, and hard, and he couldn't swallow it or spit it out. His belief was hit again. He once respected and worshipped Amos as his father. Ever since he found out that Captain Cheng Ling's death was related to Amos and knew about many dirty and terrible things Amos had done, he fell into despair. But he always believed that his country was a messenger of justice and a beacon of international civilization. He could not accept that his country had such an unbearable side. Nolan's expression exposed his inner thoughts at the moment. John Killen looked up at Nolan and pursed his lips. I tell you this, not to condemn you or your country. Every country and race, every organization and group has good people and bad people. Today, I see these things, I feel a little excited and say a little too much. What's more, it's your own family's business, so you have to figure it out yourself. There's no point in showing your wounds to outsiders. Nolan bit the tip of his tongue and quickly regained his composure. Mr. L, I am very grateful for telling me these things. During this period of time, I have been living in chaos and can't find the direction to move forward. What you said today gave me a goal. You should figure out your own family affairs. Thank you very much for telling me this, Nolan said. I felt that my life had no goals before. Now, I have found my goals. The sun does not shine on the world. This world has countless dark sides. He still has some ability, so he can let the light shine on more places. John Killen smiled faintly. He seemed to see the shadow of Cheng Ling in Nolan. Ring ring dash. Nolan's pocket suddenly rang with music. Both of them were startled. Oh, I forgot that their mobile phone signal had been restored long ago. Nolan took out his mobile phone and glanced at the screen. Caller, a boss. This is Amos's nickname. An expected call. Nolan answered the phone. Sir. At this moment, Nolan resumed his usual cold tone. Hearing that there was nothing unusual in Nolan's voice, Amos breathed a sigh of relief. Are you still on the yacht? Yes, Nolan replied. I'll send someone to pick you up and leave there. When the boat arrives, you must leave there immediately. Don't communicate with anyone, don't ask any questions. Nolan frowned and pretended to be embarrassed, but, I haven't completed my mission yet. Although Amos has many people on hand now, there are very few elites. As a leader among elite talents, Nolan, although a little cold, has strong business ability and is loyal. Don't worry about the mission, leave there quickly. Seeing that Nolan was still obsessed with the mission, Amos was a little anxious and blurted out, "Don't say but, it's too late, you can't leave." "Can't leave? What does it mean? Is someone going to do something to the tourists of Golden Island? The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment." Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 435. But Nolan couldn't ask any more questions. Amos realized that he had said something wrong and coughed lightly. "That's it? Contact me after returning to America. I have something to tell you." Nolan lowered his eyelids and responded coldly, "Okay, sir, I got it. What's the room number of your yacht?" 306. Yeah. Amos paused for a while. He seemed to want to tell him something, but finally gave up. "Good luck." "Thank you, sir." Amos hung up the phone. Nolan put his phone away with a serious expression and said to John Killen, who walked away to avoid suspicion, "Mr. L, my master called me just now." John Killen looked at him. His expression was a little confused. "Is it necessary to inform me about this kind of thing?" Nolan continued, "He sent someone to pick me up and he said that if it was too late, I wouldn't be able to leave." John Killen frowned. "You mean, the yacht might be cleaned? Think about the sniper hiding in the dark of the room, deliberately aiming at the people who jumped into the sea, hoping that the people on the boat would not leave. They wouldn't be so cruel as to kill everyone on the boat, right? The guests on the boat were either rich or noble." Nolan looked anxious. "What are you going to do?" Under Amos's protection, he could leave smoothly. But how could Mr. L escape? Nolan would never let John Killen go with him. In that case, both of them would be finished. John Killen was not worried at all. He kept checking the documents he stole from the collection room to make sure they were sealed completely. He said, "You don't have to worry about me. If your master can take you away, then there must be people on the ship who are of higher status than you and can also evacuate. By then, there will be many speedboats on the sea to pick people up. I will jump into the sea in the chaos." Nolan was a little anxious when he heard it. That sniper is very powerful. And there may be more than one sniper. "It's okay, I will choose a good angle and block the line of sight. The floating corpses in the sea will be my cover," John Killen said. "This plan is bold and rough." At this moment, Nolan couldn't think of a better way. There was a noisy voice coming from the corridor. Nolan leaned on the door and listened for a while. "You can't force me to go back to the room, don't pull my hair. Don't push me, I can walk by myself." From just a few words, it can be heard that the crew invited the guests stranded on the deck back to their respective rooms. The corridor was quiet. John Killen and Nolan could hear that there was someone standing at their door. So, the two stopped talking. Then, the luxury yacht turned off the engine. The yacht just floated on the sea. Not long after, the sound of speedboat motors came from a distance. Judging from the number, there were at least 3 or 4. Nolan stood by the window and looked out. In the farther sea, there were also several speedboats breaking through the sea and coming quickly. So quick action? Then, the door was knocked. Nolan confirmed that the two had packed their things, so he opened the door. A strange crew member stood at the door. It was not Lucas, their butler in Golden Island. The tall, gloomy waiter said in broken English, "You two, please come to the deck with me now." The two of them didn't waste any words and walked out of the room immediately. After coming out, they found that there was a sturdy crew member standing outside almost every guest room. A guest in a room not far away yelled, "I want to leave this ship. Let me go. There's a speedboat outside to pick me up." The crew at the door was unmoved, letting the guests push and shove, as if their feet were rooted, and they didn't move at all. John Killen and Nolan followed the crew and walked towards the stairs. Several doors were open, they were allowed to evacuate. Other doors were closed. John Killen followed the crew and Nolan, thinking, it seems that the crew didn't know the exact number of guests' rooms that could be evacuated. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to follow Nolan to the deck. However, he still had to keep a distance from Nolan in time to avoid being noticed by the people who were supposed to pick Nolan up. There was no guest who could be evacuated in the third-class cabin. There were a few in the second-class cabin. The first-class cabin had the most passengers evacuated. John Killen saw Yukari Kasai from a distance. She changed into another Lolita outfit, which was also very recognizable. John Killen slowed down his pace and tried to let others block his figure. He raised his hand and touched the mask on his face to make sure it was worn tightly. He didn't see Jim Leinster until he got on the deck. However, he saw the tall silver-haired woman pushing a wheelchair. A man in a blue striped suit sat in the wheelchair, wearing a square paper bag, with only 2 holes for his eyes, so his true face could not be seen. The man's hands were on his legs, with heavy wrinkles and age spots on his hands, and he looked like an elderly person. He saw Kasai bowing to the old man in the wheelchair. But he didn't see the owner of the badge, Jim Leinster. Where did he go? Has he been executed? At this moment, John Killen was in no mood to think about Jim Leinster's life or death. He was looking for the best place to jump into the sea. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 436. The wide deck was now full of people. There were no less than 30 crew members and guests waiting to be evacuated. At this time, the guests were eager to leave the luxury yacht, so the crew naturally didn't have to bother to take care of the guests, which gave John Killen an opportunity. At this time, John Killen was already 7 or 8 meters behind Nolan and the crew leading them. The crew didn't notice. "I'm here to pick up the guest in room 205," a speedboat in the sea shouted. "Guests in room 205, the crew shouted to the crowd, "is the guest in room 205 here?" "I'm guest 206, let me go first," a guest shouted. The crew's forehead was sweating. "Hello, please don't be anxious, we will leave in the order of first come first served." "Do you know who I am?" the guest shouted. The crew spread his hands helplessly. "No matter who you are now, you have to follow the order." At this moment, more than a dozen speedboats gathered around the luxury yacht. The traffic was quite congested. There was a lift on each side of the luxury yacht. Guests can take the elevator to the speedboat that will pick them up. Those behind can only queue up. The guests were dissatisfied and shouted. At this time, a breathless guest squeezed through the crowd. "I am guest no 205. The crowd made a path for him to reach the elevator smoothly. The guest got on the speedboat, and the speedboat accelerated and left the yacht without hesitation. The next speedboat in the fleet immediately came forward and stopped at the elevator. The person driving the speedboat shouted to the crew, "Room 301. The crew turned back and shouted to the crowd, "Guest in room 301. Please come immediately. Guest in room 301. Nolan saw the speedboat that belonged to him. It was in the queue behind room 301. The speedboat was driven by one of his team members. There was also a big man on the speedboat whom he did not know. Nolan had already noticed that John Killen was leaving him. He was thinking seriously, Is it really safe to keep the badge and videotape on him? Will he be strictly checked when he goes back this time? Both of these things are deadly. If he is exposed, he can only go to see God. Nolan is not afraid of death. But he is afraid of meaningless sacrifice. This world full of flowers is not as beautiful as he sees. It's just that many dirty and rotten places are covered with plastic flowers to hide the ugliness, paralyzing people's nerves. By chance, he opened the fake flowers and saw the ugliness underneath. He wants to eliminate these ugliness. At the very least, let this ugliness be exposed to people. If he dies, the fake flowers will fall and cover up the ugliness again. He can't bear it. At this moment, the only one who can help him is John Killen. Is John Killen really trustworthy? When seeing X-31 Force experimental data, John Killen's expression unexpectedly appeared in front of Nolan. Nolan stopped abruptly. The crew leading him was confused. "Sir, what's wrong with you?" Nolan patted his pocket. "I just dropped something, I'll go pick it up." The crew wanted to stop him. "The boat that picks you up has arrived, hey." Nolan was like a flexible fish, diving into the crowd. He saw John Killen's figure. He squeezed towards him. "Hey. What are you doing? Don't squeeze." People blamed and complained about Nolan, who was walking against the crowd. John Killen naturally saw Nolan walking against the crowd. Under the bronze mask, his handsome eyebrows twisted into knots. What does this man want to do? Nolan didn't make eye contact with John Killen at all. Strive to get closer. Getting closer and closer. 3 steps, 2 steps, 1 step. John Killen felt his shoulder hit by him. Following that, John Killen's pocket sank. There was something in his pocket. The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 437. John Killen had a guess in his mind. He was in disbelief. The emblem of the Freemasonry, Nolan and he both know its importance. John Killen wanted to call out to Nolan, but out of the corner of his eye he saw someone following Nolan. He could only give up and hide aside. After Nolan stuffed something into his pocket, he did not stop, but squeezed towards the entrance of the cabin, lowering his head and pretending to look for something. Suddenly, he shouted, "Baby, ha, you are here." Nolan bent down after shouting, and when he straightened up again, there was a black wallet in his originally empty hand. "Found it," Nolan said happily. The crew member responsible for getting Nolan onto the speedboat finally squeezed in behind Nolan. Only then did he realize that John Killen had disappeared at some point. He looked around Nolan with some confusion and asked, "Where are your companions?" Nolan pretended to be stupid. "What companion? It's just a black man wearing a bronze mask." Suddenly, the tall crew member's eyelids widened, his pupils shrank suddenly, and the questioning came to an abrupt end. He looked at Nolan in disbelief, then looked down at his chest, then collapsed limply on the ground. A dagger penetrated deeply into the crew's heart. Nolan loosened his grip on the dagger. Everyone was looking at the sea, and this small accident did not attract anyone's attention. Even if someone saw it, they didn't yell. What's the use of being nosy? Besides, it was just a crew member who died. Even if it was his family members who died, he might not make it public. At this moment, life is important. Nolan neatly delivered the things and killed the people. He turned around without any pause, pushed through the crowd again, and tried his best to move towards the elevator. At this moment, the crew member standing by the elevator shouted for the 3rd time, "Are the guests in room 306 there?" If there is no response, we can only wait until later. Nolan waved to the crowd and shouted, "Guest number 306, here." Masked people uttered disgruntled denunciations. "What are you doing?" No response for a long time. Although people were reluctant, they still gave way to him. It's not about grace, but the faster the person in front walks, the sooner it's your turn. Nolan came to the elevator and successfully boarded the speedboat that picked him up. The speedboat was driven by members of the H-Rangers. When the team members saw that Captain Nolan was unharmed, they breathed a deep sigh of relief. They couldn't help but cross themselves and murmured, "Thank God for blessing." Nolan patted him on the shoulder. The team members breathed a sigh of relief, then turned the steering wheel and started the speedboat after hearing the urging whistle of the boat behind them. The speedboat speeds away from the luxury yacht. Nolan turned back and squinted at the huge and luxurious yacht. He didn't see John Killen. The yacht shrank smaller and smaller in the field of vision. Nolan looked away. Turning around, I met a pair of searching eyes. The owner of the eyes was another person on the speedboat whom he did not recognize. He was a big man, with muscles all over his body, and throbbing blood vessels, winding on the surface of his skin. He has short, curly brown hair, a high nose, thick lips, and a pair of pretentious black sunglasses. Is he imitating Schwarzenegger in Terminator? Nolan complained in his heart. However, what is the identity of this pseudo-Terminator? Nolan speculated in his mind. Is it a sheepdog? Or are they the subordinates of the automobile manufacturing boss who gave him the task? Have no idea. And Nolan doesn't care. Mr. L, I hope you are safe and sound, Nolan prayed sincerely. Asterisk. When John Killen felt his pocket sink, he vaguely guessed what it was. In order to verify his idea, he still reached out and touched his pocket. He touched the metal badge with Nolan's body temperature and the narrow videotape. The videotape was carefully packed by Nolan in multiple layers, whether in fresh-keeping bags or waterproof bags. John Killen was worried, so he took out the waterproof bag from the other pocket and put on another layer. When he saw Nolan's figure disappearing into the elevator, he walked towards the stern of the yacht. He also had the waterproof backpack on his back. However, he left most of the weapons in the bag in the room. It is a pity. There is also a sense of security missing. But if John Killen wants to jump into the sea to escape, the heavy weapons will become a burden and make it more difficult for him to escape. Soon, hunched over and without most people noticing him, he arrived at the stern of the yacht. Here are the iron ropes used by the crew to go into the sea. He wants to use this iron rope to slide into the sea. Quietly. But at this moment, a familiar voice came from behind him. Huh? Mr. Bing Shan? What do you want to do? Where are your companions? It's Yukari Kasai. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 438. The shuttle-shaped luxury yacht has an elevator on each side. The elevator Nolan and Kasai left was located on both sides, blocked by the tall cabin building. Just a few minutes ago. Room 107, the crew shouted. Kasai Yukari waved her hand in the crowd, and then she took Hirao to the elevator. According to the rules, Hirao-kun got on the boat first, and she got on later. After Hirao-kun got to the speedboat, Kasai took the Lolita skirt and stepped onto the elevator. As a result, she accidentally saw a familiar figure, flashing past her field of vision. Disappeared at the stern. Is it that handsome Oriental guy? What is he doing at the stern? She hesitated for a while, and the other guests couldn't wait any longer, and urged her, "Hurry up! Hurry up! We're waiting." Yukari Kasai made a decision, and she said to Hirao in the speedboat, "Hirao-kun, go around to the back and line up, I have something to deal with." The master's order is beyond doubt. It cannot be disobeyed. Hirao-kun immediately bowed 90 degrees, "Yes, miss." Yukari Kasai walked towards the stern. Seeing John Killen lying on the stern and looking down. "Huh? Mr. Iceberg? What are you doing? Where are your companions?" she asked. Hearing her question, John Killen raised a cold angle under the mask. This was the first time he was grateful from the bottom of his heart for his parents giving him a good body. The descendant of the X-31 war criminal is here as expected. Each auction item in the auction collection room is marked. In addition to a brief introduction of the item, there is also the name of the owner of the item. The owner of X-31 unit experimental data, part, is the Kasai family. In an instant, a clear line connected Kasai and X-31 unit. In X-31 unit, there is a military doctor with average skills, named Kasai Saho. Because of his average medical skills, his name is not well known to the public. After being acquitted by the military court, he returned to Japan. A few years later, a small medical equipment store was established in a small town in Japan. The store manager was named Kasai Sae. For some reason, this war criminal changed his name, from Kasai Saho to Kasai Sae, so John Killen didn't think of him at the first time. After the war, Japan supported many industries in its country and rebuilt after the war. Kasai Sae was very lucky and caught the ride of the times. Although his medical skills were average, he was very capable of getting along with everyone. The medical equipment store expanded its production scale and established a hospital with the same name, Kasai Hospital. His eldest son, Yuri Kasai, Yukari Kasai's father, is a good speculator and has a great business sense. With the joint efforts of the father and son, the Kasai family has expanded its territory crazily. In just a few decades, it has become the world-famous Kasai Group. I'm afraid not many people know that the first chairman of the Kasai Group was once a war profiteer whose hands were stained with the blood of innocent people. Wait. John Killen realized that the rapid expansion of the Kasai Group might have been supported by the Masons. Perhaps, the achievements of the Kasai Group today are related to the Masons. After realizing who Yukari Kasai is, John Killen's heart could not be calm. What's more, she became interested in herself, and she knew that he and Nolan had partnered to the island together. Keeping this woman is a source of trouble and cannot be kept. At this moment, the chaos is a good time to take action. John Killen deliberately shook within her field of vision and successfully attracted her attention. Asterisk. Hearing Yukari Kasai's question, John Killen replied, "Don't mention my companion. He told me that there would be some exciting performances here, but what happened? It was disappointing. I asked him not to leave and stay to accompany me on the adventure, but he refused. We parted ways." Yukari Kasai's eyes lit up. "Adventure," she repeated. John Killen said with a bit of gloating, "I want to see how these beasts who think they are superior will be treated later. You know, it's not safe to stay on the boat, so I plan to hide nearby and peek." Yukari Kasai looked at the iron chain hanging into the sea and praised, "Hey, brother iceberg, you are very smart. This way you won't be harmed by the poison gas. Although you can wear a gas mask when hiding on the boat, who can guarantee that the toxin will not be absorbed by the skin? They are going to release poison gas. It is most likely nerve gas," John Killen thought. Luxury yacht, very airtight. The bulletproof and explosion-proof floor-to-ceiling glass is tightly sealed, and the bulletproof alloy door of the room cannot be blown open unless it is attacked by a shell. In other words, as long as people are trapped in the room, there is no chance of escape. Too vicious. No wonder they did not move the auction items in the collection room. John Killen has been worried that when they move the collection, they will find that the collection is missing, which will cause him trouble. It turns out that there is no need to move the collection at all. The poison gas attack cannot harm the collection. After the cleansing movement is completed, those big guys who were sent away in advance can come back to take their things. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 439. Yukari Kasai interrupted John Killen's thoughts. And in order to avoid malfunctions, they have to shut down the air circulation system and the yacht's power system during the gas release. The yacht will not move. It is safe to lurk on the bottom of the sea. You are so smart. When they are all dead, then open the air circulation system, and the poisonous gas inside the yacht will be exhausted. Brother Bing Shan, do you want to return to the ship? Are you thinking about the auction items? John Killen didn't know this at all. He originally just wanted to abscond from the bottom of the sea. He said a faint "Yeah, it's time for you to leave now, don't hinder my adventure." Kasai Yukari narrowed her eyes and said in a sweet and flattering voice, "Brother Hing Shan, if you are adventuring alone, if you encounter any trouble, you will not be able to save yourself, since your companion has abandoned you. Do you want to consider me? I will definitely more interesting and bold than your companions, and can also relieve your boredom." John Killen said in an embarrassed tone, "I don't want to be a burden." Yukari Kasai curled her lips, "Brother Hing Shan, don't underestimate me. I am very powerful. Moreover, I have done many bad things that you can't even imagine." She thought hard and said to herself, "I'm afraid ordinary things are not eye-catching, that thing, hey, it's still, right." She clapped her hands. "I did something really, really interesting. I am very popular in GG country, the second poorest country in the world. I founded a school in a poor place in their country. The locals regard me as a good person and call me the principal. Those poor people put their own when children are sent to school, they can eat free lunch and receive free education. Are you so kind?" John Killen looked at Kasai. She smiled like a poisonous snake spitting out its secrets. "Of course, no. They add a little bit of seasoning to their meals. Those children, their intellectual development will become retarded. Their health will become particularly bad after they reach adulthood. But they will never find it on me. This kind of material is my grandfather's proud work. As for me, I return it every now and then. To symbolically accept the worship from their parents. You don't know, I couldn't help but laugh when I saw those people kneeling down to me so stupidly. How about it, am I qualified to take risks with you?" "Qualified," John Killen said. He forced himself not to kill her now, but still hesitated. "It's just..." "What?" Kasai immediately asked, "do you have any more questions?" "Your speedboat is still waiting for you, right?" John Killen said. "If they stay nearby, what's the point of risking it?" "This is easy to handle." Yukari Kasai immediately took out her mobile phone and made a call. Soon, the call was connected. "I have some important things to deal with, so I won't evacuate for the time being." "Well, don't worry, I won't be hurt by the gas, okay." Then she made another call. "Hirao-kun, I still have things to deal with on the ship. You can leave on the speedboat first." Hirao has always obeyed Miss Kasai's advice. The eldest lady has her own reasons for everything she does. There is no need for the eldest lady to explain anything to herself. So, the speedboat Hirao was on left the team and sailed into the distance. Kasai put away his phone. "Is it okay now?" John Killen nodded and pointed at the iron rope. "Which one of us will go first?" "I'll get off first," Kasai said. In this way, Mr. Iceberg can stand on it and keep staring at him. Kasai knows how to show off his charm. Although she was wearing a long-winded Lolita dress, it did not affect her activities at all. Her body slid down the iron rope, as if she were pole dancing. One thing to say. Her core strength is indeed strong, and you can tell at a glance that she has received professional training. John Killen watched her enter the sea and thought, "Don't underestimate the enemy." John Killen also slid down the iron rope. "The water is very cold." John Killen let go of the iron rope and stepped on the water to keep his balance. At this time, Kasai swam over like a sea snake. "Brother Bing Shan, We have to wait for a long time, and it's so cold, why not, let's do something exciting. After saying that, without waiting for John Killen's answer, she raised her hand and lifted John Killen's mask. This face under the mask is so beautiful. Kasai sighed. Even someone as picky as her couldn't find any flaws in this face. One more stroke makes it thicker, one less stroke makes it lighter. Especially his dark eyes, ascetic and cold, simply alluring. Kasai couldn't help but imagine, what would it be like when Brother Bingshan is in love? Just thinking about it makes my legs weak. It's not very safe here, it's easy to be seen. John Killen endured the physical discomfort and did not push her away, but looked around. I don't want to put on a porn show for the snipers on the ship. Kasai Yukari smiled, it's okay, they have evacuated now. Really? John Killen raised the corner of his mouth, in other words, no matter what we do here, no one will find out. That's right. Kasai blew into John Killen's ear, and then her legs and arms wrapped around John Killen's body like a snake. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 440. Yukari Kasai was determined to win at this moment. John Killen was her prey. As long as he had tasted her once, he would not be able to accept other mediocre women. After a charming smile, Kasai hooked the fingers of her right hand on his perfectly contoured chin. He had a cold temperament, giving people an inviolable sense of abstinence. He was really lovable. John Killen raised his hands, put them on her shoulders, and asked, "Do you know what I like most?" Kasai looked at his handsome face close at hand with confusion and breathing rapidly. What? I like to see the bad guys being punished, he said. Kasai was stunned. What did he mean? What does bad guys being punished mean? The next moment, her cheek hurt. Ka. John Killen's hand knife, like two heavy swords, chopped fiercely on her jaws on both sides, with great force and precise position. Yukari Kasai's jaw was instantly dislocated, and her tongue drooped out. At this moment, she could only make a vague and weak sound, ah, ah. Kasai Yukari reacted quickly, holding back the pain, and immediately raised her arms, wanting to fight back fiercely. John Killen didn't give her this opportunity. He tilted his head to avoid her attack, and at the same time, he pressed his left palm against his right fist, and hit Kasai's nose with his right elbow. Crack! A very terrible bone-breaking sound. Her nose was broken. The red nosebleed instantly rushed out of her nostrils. The pain of a nose injury is unbearable for ordinary people. Kasai's head went blank in an instant, and tears rushed out horizontally. Her hands were raised reflexively, trying to touch her nose. John Killen swung his arm hard when he raised his hand again. There was a dagger with a cold light in his hand. He had always hidden a dagger in his sleeve. With this swing, the dagger slid into his palm along the sleeve. The next moment, he held the dagger and slashed across Kasai Yukari's wrist. She first felt her wrists freeze, and then she felt a fine and dense pain like ants. She could only make an ah-ah sound, which was swallowed by the sound of the sea and waves. Then, John Killen took a breath, dived into the seabed, and deftly dislocated her two leg bones. After he surfaced, he took out a simple inflatable float from his bag. This float is only as big as a matchbox when compressed. When needed, open the safety valve and slap it hard, it will become a 40 cm * 60 cm float, which is enough to float a person under 180 caddies on the sea. John Killen tied her back to the float, tore off the lining of her skirt with a knife, and covered her face with this cloth. At this moment, she was like a lifeless floating corpse floating on the water. John Killen sank his entire body to the bottom of the water, only occasionally using the floating Kasai to cover himself and take a breath. The previous ambiguous atmosphere was swept away. Kasai was furious. She had never been insulted like this in her life, At this moment she was like a fish on a chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. She was the prey. The funny thing was that she thought she was a hunter. What was that saying? The highest level hunters often appear in the form of prey. Kasai closed her eyes and gave up struggling and resisting. She hoped that this man would kill her as soon as possible, so that she could make him pay a heavy price. John Killen did not kill her immediately. Including just now on the deck, it was easy for John Killen to kill Kasai Yukari. The reason why he did not kill her immediately was that Kasai had a small health status monitor implanted in his left shoulder that could monitor heart rate and blood pressure. It can monitor Kasai's physical condition in real time. If Kasai's heart stopped beating at this moment, then I'm afraid he really wouldn't be able to escape.